one of those houses?
That's how you get a place for half the market value.
What? Are there cameras?
No.
What?
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 found footage style horror film 15 Cameras. The film is directed by Danny Madden and it stars Will Madden, Angela Wong Carbone, James Babson and Hitty Bowen. Now the film follows a young couple, Cam and Sky, who essentially buy like a large complex at like an unbelievable price. And they wanted to kind of do it up and rent some of the like units out to tenants to make a bit of money, as you would. But one of the big hit shows on the streaming service that they're watching is a show about a landlord that essentially used to own properties and peek on his guests and tenants and then murder them. Sky, the girl, is absolutely fascinated with this show. And then she learns from Cam that actually the property that they've bought and are living in used to be owned by this particular landlord, and there were some deaths that took place there. She really struggles to cope with this knowledge. However, they try and move on. They start bringing tenants in, and then Cam discovers some hidden cameras within the house. He becomes fascinated with the thought of peeping on people. And at the same time, it becomes clear that there actually might be somebody watching them from the outside. And things may not exactly be as they seem. And this particular landlord that everybody thinks is dead may be alive and kicking. Right, what are my thoughts on 15 Cameras? Well, when I started watching this, and even after I finished watching this, to be honest, I didn't realise that this was part of a threequel, a trilogy of movies. There was a film came out in, I think it was 2015, called The Landlord, or 13 Cameras. And then a couple of years later, there was I See You, which was called 14 Cameras. So I had no idea of this, so I'm actually quite interested to go back and watch the first two now. But saying that, I don't necessarily think you would need to have watched the first two to enjoy this, because I certainly got a decent amount of enjoyment from this film. You definitely understand the concept and the idea of this landlord that killed people and all this kind of stuff, and the way they set that up with this like street. I mean, we all watch true crime documentaries, don't we, on Netflix and places like that. And it, that's what this kind of streaming service is set up like, so that she's absolutely fascinated by this true crime documentary about this landlord that murdered his tenants. And then when she finds out that actually the property that they're living in, used to be owned by him, I mean, that would just blow your mind, wouldn't it, and freak you out. And then her partner, Cam, when he discovers that there are these hidden cameras in the house, I mean, when you can get past the thought patterns that, if this would have been a murder house, surely this whole place would have been, the whole place would have been gone through with a fine-tooth comb, and these cameras would have been found. And used as evidence and all this kind of stuff. So you've got to kind of get over that hurdle a little bit. So it's not necessarily believable in that sense. And he doesn't necessarily act like a normal person. Like, I know what I'd do if I owned a property and I found that there were cameras in there that were spying on guests. You know what I mean? You would you'd immediately inform your guests and your partner. You'd get a workman in as soon as possible, get everything out, sort of thing. But no, not Cam. He decides he's going to be a pervert. So it's actually quite interesting to watch the levels that he lowers himself to, and probably he doesn't do enough to explore this new layer of his character. The fact that he's discovered that he enjoys this voyeurism, with this watching other people, and he actually manipulates people's lives in order to peep on them. He'll tell someone to say, "Oh, I have a shower when I want to relax. Go and get yourself a shower," and then they go and get a shower, and then he charges off to go and have a look at the cameras. So he's a really creepy guy, really, this Cam. And then you've got this whole layer of, is this slumdog landlord dead or alive? The Netflix type streaming documentary that they're watching claims that he burnt up in a van, but there's been no evidence found that he is dead or alive, sort of thing. So, I mean, and then there's a white van that's seemingly stalking them outside the house. So you can kind of see where it's going. This film is kind of, it's performed well by all the actors and stuff. It's believably done, which I always enjoy in found footage type films. And this isn't fully found footage. You know, it's a bit of both. You get conversations, you know, in normal scenes between characters, and then you get lots of scenes with him looking at cameras and all that kind of stuff, and lots of scenes of this landlord on that streaming service killing people and all this kind of stuff, and people have been interviewed like documentary style for that documentary streaming thing. So it's almost like it's quite meta in a way. But it's nicely done, and it builds and builds and builds and builds to the crescendo at the end, and the crescendo, I have to be honest, doesn't disappoint. It's quite, by this point you've become attached to the characters, whether you like the characters or not. You do feel like you've built a relationship with them, and then the film just kind of, you know, gets very intense by the end, is what I want to say. And it's I'm not sure if surprising is the right word, but it's not exactly what I expected. But it was certainly quite impactful what we get at the end. But it's kind of hinting what's coming throughout the film. And especially, I'm guessing, if you've seen the first two movies, you kind of know very well what's coming, I suppose. But for me, who didn't even know these first two movies existed before this film finished and started researching it, it's okay. It's a pretty decent found footage film, this. I think there's a lot here to enjoy. It's well made, well performed, feels fairly creative in parts, and definitely delivers on the thrills and the effectiveness when it decides to, you know, dip its toes into the horror side of the film as well. So, yeah, I thought this was definitely watchable, and I'd certainly recommend it if you're a fan of found footage films. And please let me know in the comments if you've seen the first two films. Let me know what your thoughts are on them, because I'm definitely going to try and seek those out and watch them too. So thank you very much for joining me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please click the like button. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I will of course be back with more content on the channel very, very soon.